Siamo qui con Ian Paice, buonasera e benvenuto, dei Deep Purple, storico batterista dei Deep Purple, per il concerto che ci sarà stasera al Teatro Astra di Schio, organizzato da SchioLife. My first question for you is, you are the only member of the group that never quit the band. How did the way of composing and playing music change, and how the audience their attitude toward live show changed the attitude toward the live shows?
The creation of music, that doesn't change. No matter your friends in the band may change, but the way you approach trying to find something from nothing. You know, in the morning you go in the studio and you start to play, and somebody joins you, and maybe an hour later you have a baby song, a little baby song there. So that doesn't change. You still try and take something from nothing. The audiences, yes, they have changed. 35 years ago, the attention span was a little longer. You could take more time with the music. You could extend solos. You could play new music, and they would give it a chance. Now the whole world is more immediate. Everybody wants what they know. They want it now, and they don't want it to take too long. So that has changed, yeah. And as a musician, you have to understand that although you like to play for yourself, you have to make the audience go home feeling happy. So you have to understand that you cannot take 10, 15 minutes over a solo nowadays when 5 minutes would do a much better job.
Among few other bands, you have been the progenitors of hard rock. Nowadays, there are many different genres derived from rock. What was the main factor that led to this cultural evolution? I mean that now there are many different kind of hard rock.
I think when you put any 2, 3, 4, 5 people together in a musical situation and you say, create something, what you get is the only possibility. There is no second possibility. If you put these 5 people together playing rock and roll, then they will each play the rock and roll the way they feel it from their heart. And what you get from that mixture is the only solution. There is no other possibility. So when John Lord, Ritchie Blackmore, myself, Ian Gillan and Roger Glover came together, we couldn't do anything else. That's the way the music happened. If we tried to do something else, it would have been impossible. So what I'm trying to say is that sometimes you are very lucky. Sometimes what you create, what you end up playing, is something that the people want to hear. So if you do the right thing at the right time, you become successful. But it's not any great genius. There's a lot of luck and a lot of trusting your own belief about what you want to do and what people want to hear. Sometimes the two come together and you are lucky.
You have a strong classical background, and you have played also other genres like blues, folk, and progressive. These influences require high technical and cultural skills. Do you think that young bands have the same attitude in research?
I think the difference is that when we were growing up, my generation were in our teenage years, we heard a lot more different styles of music. We didn't hear much rock and roll. In England, we only had like 2 hours a week of rock and roll. Everything was controlled by old people, and they didn't want to hear rock and roll. But we heard jazz, we heard folk music, we heard pop, we heard country, but we heard everything. And so we took a little bit of everything. Nowadays, everything is so specialized. You will have top 40 radio, classic rock radio, country radio. And people pick their one thing, and that's all they listen to. So they don't see the big picture. They just see, look, that's the kids as well.
They don't have a panoramic view.
They're not looking for anything else. I like hard rock. This is what I listen to. What they tend to forget is that we who created hard rock listen to everything. And sometimes you might take an idea that just hits you from a piece of Tchaikovsky, but it might be a piece of Miles Davis. It might be a piece of country and western music. And you say, how would this work in rock and roll? How can I change it? How can I use this? And if you see the big picture, then you have many more chances to create something different. If you just see a little picture, it's much more difficult. And I think most young bands now, they just see the little picture. They do it very well, but eventually everything sounds the same. I like things to sound different.
As far as classical background, why people that listen to heavy metal is usually interested also in classical music? What do they have in common, classical music and heavy metal?
On the face of it, nothing. You know, you think about it, there's no connection at all. One is very intricate, very difficult to do. First, you have the technique to play some of these orchestral pieces. It is one end of the spectrum. And then you see a really heavy band like a Metallica. And, okay, they have the technique to make it work, but they're coming from the opposite end of the musical spectrum. Everybody in the band is self-taught. They don't know the theory and the orthodox way of doing music. So why the two sorts of music are encompassed and loved by metalheads is a complete mystery. But you're right, they do seem to like taking this brutal music and making it sophisticated. It's very strange. I can't explain it. I know you can't. No.
You have always have very iconic album covers. The most popular is maybe the one of In Rock, the one with the Mount Rushmore. The cultural weight of album covers has been very definite until the late 90s. Nowadays, it seems to be less important. In the digital era, what are the marketing strategies regarding the promotion through images? It seems that this thing that of the album covers is less important now.
Well, you cannot get the same interest on something this big as you can on something this big. When we made LPs, albums, 12-inch pieces of vinyl, the cover was big. You could create a piece of art which was big enough to be looked at by itself. Sometimes you did it well, sometimes you didn't do it so well, but the important thing was the idea, and the idea linking towards the music that you were selling people on the record. It's very, very difficult to do the same thing on a CD cover. It's just not big enough. And so, as people don't look at them the same way, I mean, when you got an album, you used to open it and read all the notes. You can't read the thing. You cannot see the words. They're too small. So the album cover, as a piece of art, is less important. Basically, it's like looking at a Coca-Cola brand name. You recognize it. So what you try and do now is just make a recognizable symbol. You don't think of it as an artistic thing anymore because it gets lost. It's just too small.
Recently, you performed in Russia, and you have been guest of President Medvedev, who is a great fan of yours. Apart from his young age, it seems like there are not many European leaders that support rock and music in general. Why official institutions still remain far from this kind of music, which belongs to our culture as classical music does?
Well, let me just correct it. There's a lot of our political leaders will not admit to liking rock and roll because they don't think it's intellectual to do that, not intellectually classy to do that. But any politician who is from my generation, they grew up listening to Zeppelin, to Pink Floyd, to Deep Purple, to Black Sabbath, and of course it's part of their life. Okay, not everybody likes rock and roll. Some people did grow up liking classical music, but I think a lot of them maybe are not telling the truth, and God forbid a politician should not tell the truth. Of course, they would always tell the truth, wouldn't they? Yeah.
Surfing social networks like MySpace or Last.fm and so on, it seems that hard rock is much more spread in Northern Europe, where we can usually find also some strong folk influences. Why are North European people fond of hard rock more than us Mediterranean?
I think a lot to do is that we see the changes from country to country, and the more the more power that the music television stations have, MTV, VH1, you name it, the more destructive it is for music in general. What they do is they separate the generations. They tell one generation, this is cool, this is not cool. They don't say, this is good. They just say, this is cool, that's not cool. And so you have a whole generation of young kids now, say from 15 to maybe 25. They've never gone to a great rock and roll show. What they do is they live in front of the TV, and when they go and see a show, they go and see a bunch of dancers. And they see maybe a very pretty young lady at the front of the stage lip-syncing to every song she does and dancing. Now, it's sort of visually impressive, but it's got very little to do with music. And when they do get a chance to go to a really good live rock and roll show, their eyes are opened. They see what is missing from this dance routine. Don't get me wrong, I think great dancers are really impressive to watch, but it's not music. It's a visual medium. Music is an audio medium, And if I go and see a music concert, I want to see music. I don't want to see dancing. So, don't want to see it.
Yes, but I was talking about this kind of hard rock that, yes.
I went somewhere else.
No, it's interesting what you just said because.
So the point was.
Northerns are more attracted from.
I don't think some of the northern countries are, and I take Britain aside. Britain is very, very controlled by MTV and VH1. Yes. But some of the northern countries, South American countries, the Far East, they are not controlled so much by the TV media, and the kids make their own mind up. And they listen to everything, and they pick what they want to see and what they want to listen to. And the kids decide who are the big stars, not the music television. In certain countries, in Britain and in America especially, MTV dictates who's a big star. It doesn't matter if they're any good. If you're on MTV, you're a big star. And that's the way kids think now. So where the kids are thinking a little more for themselves, then hard rock music, metal music, pop music, country and western, it all gets a chance because the audience make the decision. And in some countries, it's not quite so easy for them because they don't see nothing.
Last question. In the realm of the arts, the use of technologies and digital devices like iPad and so on have grown more and more. Even in the area of contemporary dance, for example, there are some researches about artificial intelligence applied to ballet. Do you think that this kind of studies can lead to a brand new elements of music or elements of rhythm that possibly don't exist yet, like it happens in scientific research?
I think you can create, when you're dealing in an artistic form, you can create new things all the time. Now, creating something new is not that difficult. Creating something new that has a value and a point, that is difficult, And I think what happens is that any art form has to understand that it's a form of communication. Music communicates. A beautiful piece of art communicates. In the 50s, when jazz was becoming so complex that the only people who could understand it were the people who were playing it, that killed jazz. It lost its communicating power. From being the biggest music medium, it became a very small niche medium. Rock and roll came up because it appealed to everybody. It's still here because it appeals to everybody. Whatever else does come along, and I don't believe technology can create it. Technology can copy things and produce something to a program. It cannot come up the spark of genius of a Mozart or a Miles Davis or a Lennon and McCartney or a George Gershwin. It cannot do that, and it never will. So technology as a toy, as a very useful tool, is great, but it will not show the way forward. It isn't that clever.
Okay. Thank you.